On Sunday we'd go to church, pay attention to the priest, and he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread. Everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely left my fingertips. Now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-downs. Now I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. 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 Read a questioning child's face and say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shine like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. 'Cause everything is holy now. There used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-downs. But I'm walking with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Reverend Edward Trout. My pronouns are he, him. I am passionate about uplifting and empowering others. I'm also passionate about creativity in the arts, and I'm an ordained interfaith minister through One Spirit Seminary out of New York. And it's my distinct pleasure to be your speaker this first Sunday of Advent. So, last week, Michael had talked about the fact that he and I would be sharing 2 Thanksgiving meals on Thursday with my family, just yesterday with his, and that at each meal there would be a significant empty place at the table. So on Thursday, we met at my sister-in-law Melissa's house. She and my brother Ken have hosted Thanksgiving for many years in a row, and she wanted to continue hosting, at least this year. She also had 2 brand new grandbabies, only one of which was present, but there were lots of other babies around anyway. And the thing that I noticed is, although we all sensed that emptiness, and we've sensed it before with other family members, there was no sense of solemnity. There was no sadness about it, and in fact, Ken's name came up multiple times, just shared with stories, shared still as part of the family, as did other family members. My nephew Logan, who passed away a few years ago at age 16, my mother, my sister, my father, names would come up, and it was just, we were just remembering them as part of the family and still laughing about them and enjoying them. And then we had yesterday at the Davis family, actually in this case, the Huffer, it was his Michael's sister Kim and her husband Brian, who, by the way, if you ever get a chance to join us, they make enough for an army and always send you home with like enough for 2 weeks. That's just the way that they prepare food. And the same thing. There was no sense of this darkness in the loss. It was still celebrating the joy of the loss. And in fact, one of my favorite moments was when Brian was talking about helping Kim, because Brian does usually the smoked meats and a lot of the other work. This year, Kim did a lot of the work. But he does help her a lot with preparing the feast. And Michael's mother, Nina, said, yeah, Dick would try to help. He would just always be in the way. Which, if you know his mother and father, that's exactly what she would say, whether he was in the room or not. And it was just, for me, it's like, yeah, nothing's changed. I mean, everything's changed, but nothing's changed. They're still here with us in that respect. I also know, though, that a lot of people don't have the luxury of having the families that we have. We are both very blessed in our families of birth and our families of friends of choice around us. And as we enter Advent and we start focusing this first week on faith and hope, it can be really difficult for a lot of folks. For some people, every year, this season is difficult for them. For others, this particular one, because of a loss or a shift, may be difficult. In Hebrews 11:1, it says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And before I get into my full talk, I want to say there are about 4 primary sources outside of myself that I pulled for this talk. One is Bible Hub, which is my go-to Bible reference for just comparing different translations of the Bible, but they also have some articles and things in there that are very useful. So if you will like that kind of stuff, Bible Hub is a great source. There's also a portion that I'm talking from Pema Chodron's book, When Things Fall Apart. I also am going to make reference to Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And then there's an article from Psychology Today that I found relevant. And then, of course, my observations, too. So if faith is the conviction or the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen, how do we overcome those moments when we don't have enough faith to hold that assurance? We don't have enough hope for the conviction. I don't need to see a show of hands because I know personally from many of you, many in this room have experienced a crisis of faith. Many have experienced what we'd refer to as a dark night of the soul, right? And if we can't find that conviction, if we can't find that assurance in ourselves, what do? So Bible Hub had an article on crises of faith, which I found interesting. I'm just pulling a small portion of it because it was a fairly lengthy article. But it started off talking about how common crises of faith are and how they're even biblical. You find experiences of them throughout Scripture. And from their standpoint, they defined a crisis of faith as essentially that moment when your lived experience is not matching up to what you believed or what you had been taught about God, about your faith. Those moments when there is so much wrong going on, how can a loving God allow this to happen, right? Things like that often bring us to that crisis of faith because what we were taught, that God is love, does not match our lived reality. So how can it be? And you find a lot of these crises in things like the anguish of Job or the despair of Elijah or even John the Baptist questioning Jesus with, are you the one? Even Jacob wrestling with the angel, which the angels historically in the Old Testament are often stand-ins for God. Jacob wrestled with God. And in fact, was well known for that. Israel, the name Israel, he who wrestles with God or struggles with the divine. So as we get into the season, for those that are really struggling, I'm going to make what's going to sound like a radical recommendation, but I'll explain it as I continue to go. Because I'm going to, again, this is from Pema Chodron's book, When Things Fall Apart. Who is familiar with Pema Chodron in the room? Okay, good. For the rest of you, she's a remarkable person. She's an American-born Tibetan Buddhist, author of many books, wonderful human being, and has some great wisdom. But basically, her recommendation is to go ahead and abandon hope. That's it. Abandon hope. Like, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Abandon hope. Which is in line with Friedrich Nietzsche, who actually said, hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torment of man. That's not spiritually how we normally think of hope, right? So let me get into this. So Pema talks about the first noble truth of the Buddha is that when we feel suffering, and we will feel suffering, that's part of being human, when we feel suffering, it does not mean that there is anything wrong. And that can be tough. It doesn't mean we made a mistake. It doesn't mean anything is broken. It means we're in a moment of suffering. So the thing about hope is, hope, when we drop into that moment of I'm suffering, hope can sometimes make us want to get rid of the suffering, alleviate the suffering, right? The hope is used to sort of enhance the experience rather than experience the experience. So she looks at hope and fear as both coming from a feeling of lack. That we view hope as, oh, if only, right? I can hope for this. And lack as, oh, I need this thing. And neither one are really the truth of it. In reality, what she says we should do is simply relax into that moment of who we are and what we're experiencing. And when we lean into that current reality, then we can rest in the truth of it and rest in the truth of our experience. So, and I will say, I'm going to take her meaning, but I'm going to give some slightly gentler words to be used from up here. So she says that rather than letting our negativity get the better of us, we can acknowledge that right now we feel like crap. She did not say crap. But right now, we can feel like a piece of crap. And isn't that really the compassionate thing to do, to acknowledge that? Avoid the toxic positivity and just sit with that feeling. And again, she got even more graphic in this, but that sense of like feeling like crap can be holy, right? And again, she puts it a little more graphically, but like feel it, feel the crap, smell it, Smell the crap. Like, examine it. Learn the nature of the crap. So we know the nature of shame. We know the nature of embarrassment. We know the nature of dislike. And we can know those things and not believe that there is something wrong. That's just the human experience. That's the suffering that we're going to go through as humans. And the idea of holding out hope that someday I'll be able to do this. Someday there will be a better version of me. That's the crap, right? No. You can't skip over who you are in this moment to get to the better you. You are you in this moment. You have to sit with that and love that and examine that. So in this month, the final day of November, where we focus on renunciation, on letting go, can we let go of the hope that our experience would be better? And that can be tough. Letting go of the hope that the experience would be better. Just as Buddhist monks will renounce alcohol, they renounce sex, they renounce all kinds of things, it's not because there's something inherently bad or wrong with those things. It's because it is too easy to lose yourself in those things. You don't remain present with yourself when you use alcohol or when you lose yourself in sex addiction or any of those things. And that toxic positivity version of hope is the same. We can lose ourselves by putting this shiny thing in front of us and not dealing with the crap. So I want to be clear here as I'm talking. I am not anti-hope. I very much believe in hope. For those that know me, I tend toward optimism. That is my base, and I work toward optimism, and I believe there's benefit to that. But that is not to say that we use hope as an escape. In Unity, we talk about denials and affirmations. A denial is not an escape, right? A denial is not to say there is not a tumbler sitting here full of water. The denial is this has no control over me. I can pick it up, I can drink from it, or I can not. That's the denial. The situation doesn't control me. That's what you're denying. The affirmation is, and here's what I'm going to affirm as my truth, right? So, with that, for me, going back a few months, when I saw my brother in the hospital in the last weeks of his life, he was very gaunt, almost to the point of skeletal. Very gaunt. And some of you will recognize this, but he was with us in the room. He was present, but there was also a vacancy in his eyes as if he was seeing things beyond us. And in that moment, I'm still a firm believer, right, that where there is life, there is hope. And I also understand that I'm not in control of this situation. And so for me, I held both the optimism and the reality. Things did not look good. There could be a miraculous recovery. Those things happen. Spontaneous recoveries do happen. I didn't weigh so much into the hope that I couldn't see this, but I didn't live so much in this that I couldn't see the hope. That's what we're talking about, right? Hope sees the dark. Hope sees all that and goes, and things can still come out better. With my sister, 14 years ago now, well, longer ago than that, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. She had a glioblastoma multiforme, which is a horrendous kind of brain tumor, very invasive, sprawls all over the brain. They had given her roughly 6 months to live, but they went in and operated, and they got everything they could see, which meant that she actually added more years to her life. When it came back with a vengeance, and she went shortly after that and made her transition. But it was the same thing during all of that for me. I held out the hope, Where there's life, there's hope. And I also knew this doesn't look good. Could it turn around? It could. Will it? I'm not going to say it has to, because I have no control over that. I can control me. I can't control somebody else's life. So, ever since I was a child, what I have often said is, I hope for the best, and I mentally prepare for the worst. That's just kind of been who I have been. I expect, I hope for the best, but I'm not going to lay everything in there so much that when life hands me something horrible, that I have to go spinning out of control. Again, that's just me. It's sort of that polarity management. I've talked about that before in the past, right? You've got these two extremes, and both can be true. The simplest example I ever have is, I have to breathe in air in order to live. That is a truth. Opposite, I have to exhale air in order to live. That is in direct opposition, and both are true, right? So, spiritually and emotionally, we can get those things that seem in opposition. They appear to be polarities, but in truth, both can be real. Like, we need to hold on to hope, and we need to be able to let go of hope. Both can be true. I'd mentioned I had a Psychology Today article. The article is called "Why Hope is More Than Wishful Thinking." It's by Robin Hanley Defoe. She holds a doctorate of education. She's an author and a resiliency and wellness scholar. So she makes 3 key points about hope. Hope is an active, evidence-based practice, different from wishful thinking. Right? The wishful thinking is that sort of toxic positivity version. Hope is not that. Hope is active. Number 2, the power of hope is supported by science, psychology, and history, which is true. Number 3, hope can be intentionally cultivated through daily practices. So she clarifies with the wishful thinking that wishful thinking is passive, right? Wishful thinking is where we want something to happen and we're just waiting. That's not hope. Hope isn't naive, and it's not passive. Hope is action. Hope is a choice. There's a meme, whenever it comes around, I always enjoy seeing it. It originally showed up in spring of 2022 from someone named Matthew at Crow's Fault, and he posted it on Twitter, which is now X. But every time I've read this, it always speaks to me. People speak of hope as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spiders' webs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, and grit of the cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. That is hope. And in my mind, she's about this big. That's hope. That's not wishful thinking. That's true hope. It's practical, right? And it's radical. So, Robin, in the article in Psychology Today, writes about how Holocaust survivor Dr. Viktor Frankl, many of us know that author, describes that the pursuit of meaning is grounded in hope. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And I have to say, as I was reading the article and read that quote, I was reminded of the Stockdale paradox. Does anybody know the Stockdale paradox? I believe I may have spoken on it once quite a while back. There's a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great, and in that he talks about the Stockdale paradox. And this was introduced to me by my dear friend Beth Outland. But Jim, writing this book, got to spend an afternoon visiting with Admiral Jim Stockdale, for whom the paradox is named. So Admiral Jim Stockdale was the highest-ranking U.S. military officer in the Hanoi Hilton prisoner of war camp during the height of the Vietnam War. He was held for 8 years. and tortured numerous times. So in preparation for the visit with him, Jim Collins read a book that Admiral Stockdale and his wife had co-written. They wrote alternating chapters, each from their point of view of their experience during those 8 years, and it was called In Love and War. And as Jim was revisiting Admiral Stockdale's experience, he got so depressed and felt the weight of it, and he thought, I'm sitting here in my office on a lovely sunny day, feeling the weight of this, feeling the depression, and I know he gets out. How did he deal with it, not knowing the end of his story? So when he went and talked with Admiral Stockdale, they walked around, and Admiral Stockdale said to him, I never lost faith in the end of the story. He said, I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which, in retrospect, I would not trade. So they continued walking. There was a long silence, and finally Jim asked, who didn't make it out? And Admiral Stockdale said, oh, that's easy, the optimists. Right? It's like, but isn't he being optimistic? So again, there was a long pause, and Jim was confused, and so the Admiral explained. The optimists, oh, they were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come, and Christmas would go. And they'd say, we're going to be out by Easter. And Easter would come, and Easter would go. And then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again. And they died of a broken heart. So after a very long silence again, Admiral Stockdale turned to him and said, this is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. I need to read that again. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So Admiral Stockdale did not know when, he did not know how, but he knew he would be liberated. Our thoughts are prayers, right? And we are always praying. And for those of you listening here or at home who feel trapped in your circumstances, who feel buried, who feel held back, who feel that some change in life, in the world may have left you broken, I can tell you this. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I know that you too will be liberated. And I need you to know that for yourself. But in the meantime, be honest with yourself about the situation. Confront the crap, the holy crap, right? Holy crap. Confront it. Not with wishful thinking, but true hope. The girl with the dirt on her face and the blood on her knuckles and the one who just spat out a tooth rising for another go, right? Know the truth about faith. And that faith is what you can never afford to lose, right? And know that in the end you will prevail. And if you have not yet prevailed, it is not the end. And so it is. Amen. I mean, aho, ashe. Namaste.